there are three elements of knowledge: the knower, knowledge, and the known. There are relations between these three, and at the final stage, all three stages, knower, known, and the knowledge becomes one. So the knower is almost finished in the knowledge. No more personal, no more individual knower. So that's the what we call fana. So in Bhakti way, we see things, the seer is nowhere, it's the knowledge or the known. In the enlightenment way of seeing, by the way, this enlightenment age was the 18th century, around sometimes it's called 1720 or 1740 it started. Just after 100 years of the compilation of Guru Granth Sahib. So the Bhakti, the enlightenment way of seeing is the subject, and Madan Gopal help me out here. The subject and the object are different. The knower is always there. Above the known and the knowledge, the way he sees things is different, but to use it. So all things to be used for to the known. Whatever crawls, walks on four legs, flies, swims, all for man. All for man. This is how the enlightenment way of seeing things. This whole Srishti, this whole cosmos, the whole world is for us to use. And then the enlightenment has a queer concept of progress. It's a linear concept. But things always improve. The contrast of the progress or the civilized is non-civilized, the uncivilized, the savage. So the known, the knowledge of enlightenment divides the humanity between the civilized and non-civilized or savages. Then another important aspect of this process is the undue focus on rationality. Imagination is banished, exiled from it. So that's where the romantic movement came in. They didn't want imagination, fantasy, or even superstition to be out of life. So what enlightenment did us, it's the architect of enlightenment universe. It's a parallel universe to the universe of ours. So that universe was engineered or architected by mainly on the principles of Newton, and then we have philosopher Locke, and another was Gopal. So these are the three saints of enlightenment. So what we got from enlightenment is that everything is improving, that science and technology is the answer, and the whole universe, all things are for man to use. The result is domination. The result is the pollution and everything we see here. We control. The control or domination is the result of that subject and object dichotomy or distinction. What is Bhakti movement means? This is quite interesting. I think the crisis we are facing, the solution lies in Bhakti way of seeing. Bhakti, let's say the Bhakti, what do the Bhagats say? What does the world look like to the Bhagat? I should read two lines from Bhagavad. How does the world look to the Bhagat? The world, from the perspective of Bhakti, is full of wonder. It's made of wonder. So Guru Nanak says, Vismad paun vismad pani, Vismad agni kheda vidani, Vismad tarti, Vismad khani, Vismad saad lagga prani, Vismad sanjog, Vismad vijog, Vismad pukh, Vismad bhog. There's many more categories, many more items of everything is wonder. Like wonderful is the wind, Vismad pan. Wonderful is the water, fire. Wonderful is this earth. Wonderful is taste. Taste the food. And wonderful is hunger. Wonderful is separation. Wonderful is meeting. Wonderful is going astray. Wonderful finding a way. Wonderful near. We are near. And wonderful distance. The whole thing, everything is wonderful. This is how the Bhagavad sees the world.
Wonderful the way you said it. Really liked it. And from poet Navtej, I would like to go to fiction writer and translator of Sikh text, Navtej Sarna. It was really wonderful the way Navtej Bharti took us into almost a trance, describing the scientific world and the world, the spiritual world. Going back to the text of Guru Sahib, what we have is a very wonderful collection. We have hymns by Hindu-born Ravidas, who was a cobbler, Namdev, a Colic printer, Bhagat Dhanna, a peasant, Bhagat Jaidev, a Brahmin, and we have Muslim-born Sheikh Farid. There is a Baba Bhikar, who were Sufi mystics, Kabir the weaver, Kabir whose poetry forms an integral part of the Guru Granth Sahib, Sadhna the butcher, Mardana the Mirasi. So, Navtej Nagaji, I'd like to ask you that you dwell on this, this very secular mood of the text, which cuts across different faiths, different callings, and brings together a culture of love and
Thank you. Thank you, Nirupama ji, and not being a philosopher like my namesake on the other side, I'm glad you brought this down to a level where I can handle it. I think you're absolutely right, because the Guru Granth Sahib is the collection of spiritual writings in poetry set to music, not only of the Sikh Gurus, but as you said, a collection of very eclectic selection from various Bhakti poets, Hindu, Muslim, Sufi poets. And why did they put it all together? What were the commonalities? As you said, there are 534 sloks or shabads of Kabir. There are 123 of Baba Sheikh Farid, which is not a small amount. And some of the things, at a very quick level, some of the things which we heard in the keynote addresses this morning are the reasons. One thing we heard Dr. Purushottam Agarwal saying, that these were all people who did not think that salvation or life or worship was only related to the transcendental. They related it to everyday life. And this was common to the vision and the thought of Guru Nanak to begin with, and the Sikh Gurus who followed. Sikhism was not something of the hereafter. It was a way of life in which was to live the right way while living in this world. You didn't really have to go off to the snowy mountains or to some caves or anywhere else where there was less population and you were alone with your God, but you had to live the life, the challenges of life, and just simply do it the right way. So there was first this engagement with real life problems and real life solutions, a kind of detachment in attachment. And this was one commonality. The second thing was that the Bhaktas and the Sufis had brought the respective religions out of the holds of the orthodoxy and brought them out into the streets, where anybody could sing or could talk or could pray to his God, man to man or woman to woman. I mean, human being to God, it was at the same level. In fact, as Kabir was quoted this morning, Kabir says, I am not running after Ram and Hari, they are running after me. I have brought myself to a situation where they are running after me. So this bringing down God to a human level where you could have dialogue, one of the first casualties in this process was Sanskrit. Because Sanskrit had become the language in which the so-called middlemen in the institution of religion were holding the four keys to the fore. You could not communicate with God until you came through them. And this was one of the things that Guru Nanak, when he started the reform, ultimately what was Sikhism? It was a reform. When he started the reform and removing orthodoxy, he questioned the Pandit and the Qazi right from day one. Even in the Sakhis of his childhood, he questions them that, who are you and how do you have privileged access to God? So there was this thing, bringing it down to the vernacular, popular language was another commonality. The third thing I heard this morning, which again relates to this discussion, is that Bhakti poetry was all about human rights and human respect. And this was a very important factor in the vision of the Gurus. For instance, the status of women, the equality of all men, no matter what their caste. And caste well, it was questioned that it was not medieval India, it was vernacular modernity, but whatever you call it, caste 500 years ago in India was a very huge factor, if it isn't today. So you can imagine what it was 500 years ago. To break that barrier, and that is why you have a weaver's poetry, you have a shoemaker's poetry, you have people from various other ways of life who were not Brahmins. And you also have the fact that not all who wanted to put their poetry into the Guru Granth Sahib, when Guru Arjan started compiling the Granth, he sent out messengers all over the country to look for people, to look for poets who had the common vision. And a lot of people came to him to say, I'm a poet, this is my poetry, can you please include it? And they were rejected. He rejected people like Shah Hussain, there was Pilu, there was Chhajju, these were people who were respected Sufi Bhakti poets, but their poetry was not included because it somewhere lacked the universal vision and the humanitarian spirit that was being looked for. So Guru Amarnath, Guru Arjan made a very, very concerted effort to collect this poetry and bring it to the Granth Sahib. So this is if you say how it was included and why it was included, I think it was a commonality of vision. It was the historical context, because Sufism and Bhakti had already shaken the ground before Sikhism formed in Guru Nanak's vision, and he began to pick these thoughts as he was traveling and going in different directions in the world. I would like to come back to this, but I don't think you want to plan this as monologues. This is my allotted time, I'll carry on. Otherwise, I'll come back to it. Thank you. Mike.
Rabia the Sufi poet, I think I was shaking my head a bit too much. Rabia the Sufi poet and Mirabai, we don't find that in the, Adi Granth or Granth Sahib. I would like you to comment on some of these exclusions.
It's a very difficult question to answer. Needs the philosophical standpoint from where Guru selected the poets and the poets and the folklorists. I was quite intrigued why Shah Hussain, the prominent Sufi, was not selected. He himself came, brought his Bani or verses to Guru, and Guru refused to include his verses. There's no scholarly response found in Punjabi. No Punjabi scholars have tackled this question. What I feel is the difference between Sufi poetry. Only one Sufi poet is included in the Granth, Sheikh Farid. The Sheikh Farid was on 12th century poet. I think what I feel is the answer to this question, why this exclusion, in spite of all the poets, prominent poets were included. Jayadev was included, and Pipa was included. Namdev was there, Ravidas is there. Why not Shah Hussain? And Shah Hussain is the only Sufi poet in Punjabi who is nearest to the Bhakti movement. His vocabulary, his symbolism, they are all drawn mostly from Gurbani and from other Bhakti. The satsang and other metaphors which are very important, Shah Hussain uses it. So what I feel is the voice that differs. All Sufi poets draw, although they refuse, they still have some lingering on the Semitic philosophy that divides between good and evil, that divides between God and Satan, that divides between meeting and non-meeting, Wasl and Hizr. Bhakti movement doesn't. So all inclusive. There is no different God. God is a problem with the Semitic philosophy. We cannot live with him, we cannot live without him. So what I feel that Sufi poetry from Baba Farid to Ghulam Farid, who was the last Sufi poet. They have different tone and still some baggage from the Semitic philosophy that is not acceptable to the whole Bhakti movement and the Adi Granth. For example,
Thank you so much. It does make a few things clear. And I've been saving two very special scholars, Madan Gopal, who has a mind and a great voice also. You know, I would like him to now, I was reading a line by Guru Nanak, Ita pasao, eko kahao, tiste hoye lakh daryao, which says the endless expanse of creation arose out of one note, giving rise to millions of streams. Madan, now I would like you to say what you will on this subject.
Right. I think for me the most important question, first of all, would be to try and understand what kind of a subject I am. This morning, or was it yesterday, when I started from my place, I was really, unnerved by the fact that I'd left my pen at home. And when I got off the taxi, I was doubly unnerved because I'd left my reading glasses in the taxi. Which is interesting because number two is, and this is where I will sort of indirectly open up this whole thing, which is, I look at a traveler, and the traveler is the first Guru, Guru Nanak. And he is not just another Guru who is not a traveler at all, who sits in a room and works on the idea of language. He is deeply concerned with the, so it is just the, the almost at one level, at the opposite of the first Guru. So he sits in a house, so he's a monad. So we have Guru Nanak who's a nomad, and we have another Guru who's a monad, who sits in a room and just works assiduously on developing a language. Then we have a Guru who is a, who is a kind of a traveler in the sense that you travel on a pilgrimage. He goes to Haridwar. He's growing old. He's a trader. And he's overcome and overwhelmed with the idea of seva. So the trade and seva with the third guru, they sort of coalesce. The fourth guru has this idea of city, which is Amritsar. So you are a traveler, you are a scholar, you are a trader, you are you're overcome with the idea of community and seva, and you have a guru who is also deeply concerned about the idea of developing a city with a very distinct center, which is the Golden Temple. From the idea of the city, we go back to the idea of the book, which is the fifth guru. And the idea of the book is, at one level very liberating, because you now know that Punjab is not enough. So in a manner of speaking, you're beginning to go back to Guru Nanak. So the idea is to make connections. So you're going everywhere. If this is the political act, I think this is the very, very important political act, if it is one. So the idea of, and of course, when you have the city, you have a very clearly defined idea of the institutions, and institutions in the sense that now you are beginning to have a cosmology of your own, independently of bhakti poetry. And let's not confuse. Now, I will like to sort of, this is my view. I will like to say that there is one very stark difference between bhakti poetry and the way Sikh poetry has appeared to us in Guru Granth Sahib. And the difference is the following, according to me. And the difference is that, and this is the reason why I very rarely sing Guru Bani in the public space. It has to do with the fact that the poet is also a guru. And this fact is always there. I mean, this is not, how I feel when I'm, for instance, relating to Kabir. This is not the way I feel when I'm relating, when I'm singing, let's say, Bulle Shah. So this idea of iconicity is built into the very act of writing poetry. So it has become canonical. And canonical, and that is why, the whole emphasis on, let's say, classical music also is very canonical. There is a kind of an implicit sort of, diktat. Not that we are emphasizing that you sing it in a particular way, but this is the way we would want it sung. So there is, this notion of canonical sort of, unfolding or decoding or interpretation, which is at one level, asking you not to trifle with the text. So I don't trifle with the text at all. And one way of not trifling with the text is to not sing it. And then, of course, after the fifth guru, you have the sixth guru, and sixth guru begins to wear these two swords of Miri and Piri. And Miri and Piri would be what? Miri and Piri would be sainthood and the warrior. Now this is the completion. This is the completion of a cosmology which then is played out in the larger political theatre subsequently. My initial sort of submission is this, but I do want to sort of end my submission with let's say 5 or 6 lines from Guru Nanak, where he sort of and for me Guru Nanak remains sort of so close to my heart. And this is the reason why he's so close. When he says, and this is the arti, Gaganamay thal ravichand deepak bane, Tareka mandal janak moti. Gaganamay thal ravichand deepak bane, Tareka mandal janak moti. Dhoop malayan lau pavan chavarao kare, Sagala banaraye pulant jyoti. कैसी आरती होवे भव खंडना तेरी आरती अनहता शब्द वाजंत भेरी. Now, before I wind up my initial argument, I just want to draw your attention to the term bhava khandana. It has been variously interpreted, and I want to offer my controversial, interpretation. Bhava Khandana has been interpreted as that which breaks fear. The idea of bhav as a bhav, bhay. My interpretation is slightly different. Bhava Khandana, if we go back to the roots, Sanskrit roots, bhav is that which is becoming, and khandan is that which is disintegrating. The identification of the larger sort of spirit which permeates this cosmos, not always benign, as that which is becoming and that which is disintegrating, but not bhava khandan, bhava khandana. If we convert bhava khandan into bhava khandana, then it becomes a gendered entity. Then it becomes feminine. The very idea of God being, or this whatever the spirit being sort of installed as a bhava khandana and not as bhava khandan excites me a great deal, except that nobody buys my interpretation. Thank you.
Very nice, Madan, and also very, very intriguing, because you have raised many questions, and not to, one wonders, whether Nanak always, when he wrote he mentions himself as Shair, Nanak Sair. But there will be few people who will dare to call Nanak a poet. I did it once at some, session like this during days of terrorism in Punjab, and I had a few boys getting up and saying, "We will fix you. You will not call our Guru the poet," like this, and taking lightly. So, I think poet, mystic are exalted stages. What more can one ask for? And we have with us Tyler Williams, who has done extensive research and study of Bhakti poetry. I would like him to share some of the aspects of Bhakti poetry with us.
Okay, once again foiled by the microphone. I'm just going to talk on just two things. That infamous सिर्फ दो बातें रखना चाहूँगा आप लोगों के सामने that turns into a lot more, but I'll keep it brief. I think I've been called as an outside observer. What I do is particularly I work on the Bhakti movement in Rajasthan, also in UP, and it was tremendously influenced by the Sikh Panth, by the Sikh Khalsa. And so I want to talk about two aspects of the Sikh community which were extremely unique in the Bhakti movement and which also influenced other communities, Bhakti communities in North India. The first of those is the emphasis on writing, on written scripture, on creating a Granth, as we know the Guru Granth Sahib to be. The second is on the idea of the court, the divine court, as an alternative court, an alternative authority to temporal authority, the authority of, say, a Raja or a Mughal emperor. Now, there was a lot held in common, of course, with these various communities in North India and the Sikh community. As Nirupama mentioned, there are quite a few bhakts, like Kabir, like Ravidas, like Paramnand Das, like Trilochan, etc., who are also sung in these other communities. And actually, some of their the very first written evidence of their work, the oldest versions of their work, are to be found in the Adi Granth, in the Sikh community. And so the Sikh community is actually, and its written record of its hymns is an incredibly valuable resource for those of us who work on Bhakti literature. It's actually where you find many of these poems written for the first time. However, there were some things that definitely distinguished the Gurus and their community, aspects of their vision, which you did not find anywhere else. The first of these, as I said, was the emphasis on writing. In fact, Guru Nanak says himself, "Sune pade kiya, likahu janjal. Liku Ramanam Gurmukhi Gopal." And so he's appealing to the listener that you can get out of this janjal, you can get out of the feudal entrapments and bonds of this life, by writing the holy name, by writing the name Ram. Thanks to the Har Sahai Poti, references to the Har Sahai Poti, we know in Guru Nanak's lifetime, he had his hymns compiled and written down, that this manuscript was passed on to Guru Angad. Later on, we know that Guru Arjan put a lot of emphasis on compiling the Adi Granth. And as Navtej said, I appreciate your comment about the emphasis on editing, how important it was the process of choosing hymns, because actually we do find, there was mention of Mirabai, we do find a pada of Mirabai in the Goindwal Pothis. And as some of you know, the Goindwal Pothis were very important. They were instrumental in creating the Adi Granth. They were early copies from the 1580s to 1590s of the Sikh hymns. And in those Goindwal Pothis, you actually find a pad of Mirabai. You actually have a poem of Mirabai, which the scribe started writing it and then later crossed it out. And this has generated a lot of questions and interest. Why did they start writing it? And why was it later edited out of the Granth? And we no longer find it anywhere else in the history of the text. This emphasis on writing continues, and as you all know, the Adi Granth, later the Guru Granth Sahib, is vested with the authority of the Gurus itself and becomes a focus of the community. And what you see happening in other communities, you can see the influence of this on those other communities as well. Nanak also writes, I think, Jali Mohu Gasi Masu. Gasi Masu Kari Mati Kagadu Saru, which he's imploring the listener to turn their body into ink, to turn their mind into paper, to write the name of Ram, to write the name of God, to write the holy word. And actually you find a similar thing in Kabir. He says, Yahut Tanjalao, Masi Karao, Likao Ram Kanao, Lekani Karao Karank Ki, Liki Liki Ram Patao. In the same vein, Kabir says, I will turn this body into ink. I will write the name of Ram. I will turn my bones into a pen, and writing, I will send it to Ram. Very beautiful pads. However, in the Kabir Panth, in a lot of these Nirgun Sampradayas and Nirgun communities like the Rananjani Sampradaya, the Dadu Panth here in Rajasthan, etc., though these texts circulated, those words of Kabir circulated in all these groups, but they didn't actually take up writing this down until after the Adi Granth had actually taken shape. And in 1636, in the Dadu Panth, you see the Panchvani, the five voices, the Granth of the five voices, suddenly written down and compiled. And after that, in the Naranjani Sampradaya, in the Dadu Sampradaya, in all of these groups in Rajasthan and North India, suddenly they're writing written holy books. And there's no question that it was the Sikh community who set the standard, who set the vision for this type of scripture. And there have been suggestions, and I think these are quite interesting questions, that Guru Nanak, he was extremely well read, he was familiar with the Quran, he saw the power that the Quran had, not only as a text, not only as a scripture, but as a focal point for a community, as a symbol. And it's quite likely that he envisioned something similar for the Adi Granth, or for the Granth he had that was compiled in his time. The other thing, and then I'll wrap up, the other element of the Sikh Guru's vision, of the vision of the community that influenced other groups, was the idea of the divine court. Nanakji says, Nanak Satguru Mitu Kari, Sachu Pavahi Darga Jai. So Nanak, make friends with the Guru, with the Satguru, make him your friend. Having gone to the court, you will find him, or you will find truth. And this idea of the court permeates a lot of the poetry of the Sikh Gurus. You find in Bhai Gurdas, one of the early chroniclers of the Sikh community, that this metaphor for the community, this metaphor for the Guru as king, and for his Sikhs as part of the court, as this community being an alternative authority to political authority, to being a higher authority, a spiritual authority. This starts off very early in the community, and it's developed over time. Again, at Ramdaspur, later Amritsar, the shape of the architecture, the shape of the community really begins on taking the form of a court. And we see in other groups as well, much later on, this is about 100 years after this process started, within the Sikh community, we see the Dadu Panth mimicking them. If you all go to Narayana, the seat of the Dadu Panth, which is a much neglected place. I encourage you all to go there sometime. You'll actually find that they've built a complete palace. And at the center of the palace is their holy book, the Panchvani and the Dadu Vani, the hymns of Dadu himself, much like you find at the Har Mandir, at the Golden Temple at Amritsar. Similarly, in the Naranjani Sampradaya, if you go to Didvana, you'll find there as well the ruins of what was once a palace complex built around the Guru, built around the holy books of the Sampradaya. And there's no question that it was the Sikh community that established this new idiom of devotion, this new idiom of the community, which actually challenged, in quite a literal way later on, especially with Ranjit Singh, which literally challenged political authority with a higher authority, with a spiritual authority. And you see this idiom taken up by other groups in Rajasthan and UP later on.
Thank you so much, Tiger. You brought the whole discussion into focus, and you knew much more than any of us. I would once again like to go back to Navtej Sarna and ask him to say where he had left off.
But thank you, Nirupama, because actually it's just pick up some of the things that Tyler and Madan Gopal have mentioned. I think, as he mentioned, bhakti is based on awe. It's devotion out of awe and love. These are the two very dominant aspects of it. It's awe because the human being is trying to grasp what is essentially not possible to grasp. So there is awe, like we saw in the Arti, which is the cosmic dance which is going on, is that, how can I describe, that is the real Arti. So out of this awe, the only way to approach this awe is loving devotion. And loving devotion, actually, here perhaps what happens in the Sikh thought, perhaps maybe goes a step further. Because loving devotion is based on what? You have loving devotion because your intellect reaches a point where it stops. So like you say every morning in the Japji, you say, "So se anpan lakh hoye te ik na challe na." That means you may have hundreds of thousands of intellectual achievements, and not one will carry on with you into the hereafter. So what are you left with? You are left with devotion. This devotion, when you combine it with awe, and here is where I think Guru Nanak is a sublime poet, not just a poet. So you were absolutely right in saying so. I think this element of awe comes through and love comes through in his poetry, and here there is a commonality with bhakti, because so much of it is written in the aspect of virah. When you have the human soul or the self is pictured as a young woman or a wife waiting for her spouse who has gone abroad or gone away to earn or to do a job, and there is this constant thing of waiting for a vigil. When will he come back? When will you come back? And when there is this union, and this is the union of the self with the divine being, and so much of it is covered there. We don't have time to go into too much, but I would like to just quote a couple of them to you. One is, of course, Guru Amar Das, Anand Sahib, which we recite so often in Sikh scriptures. He says, "Anand pya meri maaye, Satguru mai paya." It says, "Mother of mine, bliss have I attained in union with the divine master." So this is something which comes again, and Guru Nanak has written this absolutely beautiful Baramah, which is just 17 stanzas. Each one of the stanzas is a complete poem with a great lyrical outburst in itself. And each one of these stanzas defines the beauties of nature and the state of mind of this woman who is the soul, pining for God. And in those 12 months, he describes this. I will just give you in translation two short versions. One is the pining and one is the union. And it says, "In Chet," which is the month of March, April, "agreeable is the spring and beautiful the bumblebee. The forests are flowering in front of my door. May my love return home. How can the bride obtain peace when her spouse comes not home? with the distress of separation, her body is wasting away. And then later on during the year, he describes Fagun. And he says, of Fagun know, bliss abounding have those to whom the Lord, true friend, manifests himself. The holy who with God are associated in his grace, to them has he granted union. By such union comes all joy to the loving wife in the couch bedecked. All sorrow is banished. So this is an aspect which I thought I should bring out. Thank you so much.
Very well. In fact, this discussion that we had today, the vision of Gurus, is perhaps the most relevant to this festival because it turned out to be a celebration of the written word, where Gurbani says that Shabad is the Guru and the Guru is the Shabad. And also how, as Tyler pointed out, Adi Granth was the first collection of Bhakti poetry, the first anthology as we would call it in modern times. Now if we have a session where there is Madan Gopal, there is no way I can have the last word. So the last word and the last song.
As I said, I don't even abnormally sing Gurbani in the public domain. I do at my home, and no, Kabir is also Gurbani. And with Shabnam Virmani sitting there, I will be sort of most reluctant. However, just two brief things. I mean, this whole idea of not engaging with the body is something that leaves me a little sort of, it leaves a disquieting feeling once in a while. Even when we deal with the body, we deal with the body in such a way that we metaphorize it and we sublimate it into something else. So there is that one very major problem for me as a performer. Navtej ji mentioned, Chet and Phagun. I'm suddenly reminded, and this is really off the cuff, of the Barama written by Baba Bulle Shah. And Chet chaman vich koila nit kuku karan pukar, main sun chur chur mar rahi kad kar aave yaar. Hunki kara jo aaya chet, ban din phool rahe sab khet, din de apna ant na pet, जीत तो साडी हार असाडी तो साडी जीत लो मैं हारी हैं. Now लो मैं हारी हैं, I mean those of you, of course, you would remember that there used to be this A Lo Main Hari Piya from the Bombay films. That's the kind of connectivity. But this is in Bulle Shah, for instance, the idea of engaging with the body is very, very concrete. Phagun, होरी खेडन सैया फगन मेरे नैन चलारी वगन औखे जिंदियां दे दिन तगन सीने बाण प्रेम दे बजन होली हो रही. This whole idea of engaging with the body is far more direct, and there is no attempt to sublimate. The idea of love remains, but there is no sublimation. So there is this whole idea of sort of running away from the body, which as a performer, as a singer, I have and this is of course my limitation. This is not to point out the limitation, but of course the second thing that I want to mention is this. You had mentioned Sheikh Farid, Baba Farid, and you'd mentioned Rabia Basri. Rabia Basri, of course, is from Basra, so there was a difficulty in including Rabia Basri. There is no Rumi, there is no, similar, there is no Hafiz, there is no Sheikh Fariduddin Daftar. So that's a separate issue. But when we come to Baba Farid is there because Baba Farid's vision is very didactic. It's very simple, it's very economic, it's Doha, oriented. And if you are, for instance, dealing with Shah Hussain is the first poet articulates the idea of India. And the whole idea of, for instance, Salu tur Kashmir da, koi aaya barfan cheer da, Salu tur Gujarat da, koi main pau pehli raat da, Salu tur Multan da. That's, you want me to, it's a, well, I can sing, Shah Hussain, but I can't, of course, obviously. Okay. Since Navtej ji mentioned Anand, I will, please don't report it outside. Because I know Baldeep Singh will kill me if he got to know that I sang Anand. Anand paya mere maaye Satguru mein paya, Satguru mein paya, sahaj seti man vajiyan vadaiyan. राग रतन परवार परियां शब्द गा बनाइयां शब्दों तक गावहो हरि केरा मन जिन्हें बताया कहे नानक आनंद हुआ सतगुरु में पाया. So the rest of the poets wrote their poetry in the name of Guru Nanak. So let me sing. This is the first time. Bobby ji and Baksha ji, please be very Anand is sung when the child is born and the marriage is formalized and the death takes place. We are the only community that sing Anand at the time of death. Anand paya meri maaye Satguru mein paaya. Anand paya meri maaye Satguru mein paaya. Satguru teh paaya sahaj seti man vajiyan vadhaiyan. Raag ratan parvar pariyan shabd gavan aaya. Anand 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 Shabdo da gawaho Hari kera man jini basaya. Kahe Nanak Anand hoa Anand hoa Anand hoa. Kahe Nanak Anand hoa Satguru mein paaya. वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह.
There was supposed to be time for question and answers, but I kind of feel that would almost be pointless. So I hope, you'll forgive me if I don't have question time. I think we should really end on this note. Thank you so much for being here.